Welcome to the Port City Plate Podcast, presented by Bienville Bites Food Tour. The Port City Plate Podcast is serving up the food, history, and people of Mobile, Alabama for people who love the Port City. I am your host, Chris Andrews, and I'm super excited about today's episode because we're live and on site. This is the first episode that we have done outside of our little office/studio in downtown Mobile. And today I'm sitting inside the historic Battle House Hotel here in downtown Mobile with an expert historian at the hotel, Mr. George Moore. And Mr. George, his employment here at the hotel spans all the way back originally to 1958, and so he has seen a lot of things happen, not only at this hotel, but also in Mobile and in downtown Mobile. So, Mr. George, welcome to the Port City Plate Podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you and with the Port City Plate
The
podcast.
Port City Plate Podcast. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So I guess before we get started, I know your face is probably recognizable to a lot of people that's worked downtown for a long time, or people that have been downtown. But where did you grew up here in Mobile? Tell us about growing up here.
I grew up. First, I was born on Warren Street, and that's like a couple of blocks from. Well, that's Wenzel's is on Dolphin Street between Warren and Dearborn. So I was born on Warren right off of St. Louis. Then we moved to St. Anthony and Warren. Then we moved to State and Warren. And that's where I grew up until 48. Yes.
Okay.
And it was good. It was good times.
Yeah, and I guess that. So you lived in downtown Mobile.
Yes.
Your entire life. That's pretty neat.
Yes, that's pretty neat. Yeah.
What was your childhood like growing up in that part of downtown Mobile?
Oh, it was lots of fun because I stayed at a parish house that was once, the church of the Good Shepherd. I stayed at that building, the house where the priest had stayed, and it was one other family and one other lady that lived there. And we had fig trees and we had plum trees. We had a big yard in the back and in the front, and we tried to raise chickens, but it didn't work out. But we did have a rooster that was a watchdog. He was a fighter. He would fight people, and we could play football or baseball in the side yard. It was just that big.
That's interesting thinking about downtown Mobile nowadays when most people think of, they think of restaurants and they think of coming down here for the bars or for the restaurants to eat, But your childhood is completely different in downtown Mobile. You're talking about, raising chickens and...
Yeah. Well, it was during the war, and, eggs were expensive like they are now. So Dad and I came down to Sears and bought 25 chickens, and we walked home with them, and we tried raising them, but we ended up with about 3 or 4 hens and one rooster that was a fighting rooster. I tell you, he was our watchdog.
That's neat. So, all right. So you grew up here, and then your first job, was it also in downtown Mobile?
Yes, it was at Constantine. Actually, I tried to get on at the Battle House, and believe it or not, of course, I would have been making $14 a week washing pots, and I probably weighed about 120 pounds then, and those pots probably weighed as much as I did. So I went over to Constantine, got a job at Constantine.
Okay.
As a busser. I worked there like a month. It was enjoyable. I saw a Mexican movie star. Can't think of his name right now, but that was the first movie star I saw, and it was in Constantine.
That's interesting. I know, a lot of people, when you talk about the history of Mobile and you talk about the food history, especially of Mobile, Constantine's is one of those restaurants that everybody talks about that, it's been long gone nowadays. But what kind of, do you remember what kind of food was served there, and what made Constantine so special to Mobilians?
Because it was all fresh food. He started out selling hamburgers, and then he eventually went into the restaurant business. All that food was very good. Very good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you said, all right, so you bus tables there, and
I bus tables there,
and,
yes,
and the Constantine's was across the street from the hotel. How did you end up here?
It was right next to the First National Bank building. That First National Bank building was only 8 stories, yeah.
Okay. And how did you end up here at the Battle House?
Well, I was working another job and I needed extra money, had a family. So I talked to one of the guys that was working here, and I started working banquet in 1958. And so I would leave my other job on my lunch hour, come down here and change clothes, work the banquet. The Rotary International started out here in this hotel in 1914, and on Thursdays they would have their luncheon, and they still do have luncheons on Thursday. They left when the hotel closed, and they came back when the hotel opened. So in 2014, they had their 100th anniversary. But I would come from my little job down the street and down Water Street, change clothes and serve tables, and then go back within an hour. So it was good.
That's
the fun
neat.
thing was, and it wasn't fun either, I would always get a couple of tables, and both of those tables would have someone that would always want a salad instead of the lunch that they had already prepared. So that was kind of fun and not fun. But now they have their luncheon, they have buffet style.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me that people in Mobile were difficult back then like they're difficult now?
They certainly were.
All right, so I wanted to really, like I said, you talked about Mobile and you got your job here in 1958.
Yeah.
What was Mobile like in the 1950s? Because
it was not quite a sleepy town like everybody would think, but it was a thriving town. Downtown Mobile had quite a few stores, major stores like Hamill's, Gayfer's, or they had Sears, of course. Adam Glass, the big furniture store. Three Sisters was on the corner. The building is still there, and that was predominant women and girls clothing store. But it was a thriving city. We had the port, and they had the banana boats coming in twice a week. And then we had the shipbuilding going on and ship repair going on. And also the stevedoring. We had a lot of freighters coming in from all over the world to Mobile.
right. I love thinking about Mobile back then. I love seeing the old pictures, the old black and white pictures that you can find online, and I know a lot's changed even right here at the Battle House. And what's some of the things you've seen change over time here at the Battle House since that time?
Oh, since that time, well, we've modernized the hotel quite a bit, but it still looks the same as it did in 1908 when it reopened after the fire of February 5th, and the original Battle House burnt down, and this Battle House was built and opened in 1908.
Right.
Yeah.
And as we kind of got ahead of ourselves a little bit, so tell us about the history of the Battle House Hotel here at this location.
It started out, today Mobile is about the 9th largest port or busiest port. But would you believe in the 1850s and 60s that Mobile was the 10th richest city in the United States? We had people from all over the world here. So there was a hotel called the Waverly that was on this site. This is the fourth hotel on this site. The Waverly burnt down in the 1850s. So James, John, and Samuel Battle, an uncle and two step-nephews, with some other investors, decided to build another hotel because we needed it. We had people from all over the world that were coming here and buying cotton, and the Battles must have won the battle, and they named the hotel Battle Hotel. Battle Hotel, and that was in 1852, and the Strikers Mystic Society had their ball in New Year's Eve in 1852 in this hotel.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I guess a lot of, when you look at the guest list of the Battle House Hotel, you see a lot of former presidents and notable, politicians and things like that.
Yeah.
What made the Battle House so attractive in the 1800s, especially?
It featured, it had hot water.
Oh, is that right?
and private bathing facilities. So that made it a fine hotel. And the planters, they would have their balls, their birthday parties, especially after October, after the harvesting season, up until probably March, when they would go back to their homes in the rural areas and plant. But it had a lot of good features. That's why a lot of people came to that first battle house.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about Mobile's history between, we talked about 1950s and a little bit of the 1850s. What were some notable things that happened in between there? I know there's Woodrow Wilson had a dinner here and a speech.
Woodrow Wilson came here in 1913, and he spoke to this conference, agronomists, because the Alabama economy was based on food, growing a lot of food. Cotton was not as important then. It wasn't as it was in the 1850s. And in 1952, Elvis stayed here. He stayed on the second floor. All the second floor rooms were suites. They are changed now to meeting rooms. And when Elvis was over across the bay, he was doing his thing at this group party, and they said, "No, we can't have you doing that." So he left, and he came here, and he stayed in one of the suites on the second floor. We don't know which room it was, but we know that he did come and stay here.
Okay.
In 1952.
And that was before he became a little more famous a little later on.
Yeah, they would have probably let him continue on doing what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Mystic Societies, and you mentioned the Strikers in particular. Now, the Battle House was also kind of a hub for a lot of Mystic Societies in those days as well, right?
They would have their balls here all the time, and when we reopened in 2007, the Strikers came back and would have their balls also on New Year's Eve. That's when they would have their balls. The first ball I worked in 58, 59 was the Strikers ball, and it was on New Year's Eve. And the other groups would come, and we used to also house the King's dinner, and that would be on a Saturday. But the Queen's luncheon was so much bigger that they didn't have that here. And they always used to have the Camellia Ball, which was the first ball of the holiday season, of the Mardi Gras season. And it would be in the Crystal Ballroom. And I tell you, that first one I saw was so beautiful. They had a circular stairway in the ballroom, and it came from the second floor. And it was a brass rail with red carpet, wood floors, and the young ladies would walk down the stairways to meet the beaux. And it was all candlelit with small camellia plants, and the girls had on colors that were very familiar, same as camellia plants, not the whites, but they had on those pink colors. And that was really beautiful, something to see.
I bet that blew your mind as a young man in the 1950s. Huh?
It did blow my mind, yeah.
That's interesting. Of course, Mobile, kind of that prime of the 1950s kind of came crashing down a little bit, right, in the 1970s, and so the Battle House did close.
Brooklyn Field closed, and the new mall opened. Gafers moved out, Sears moved out, Hamels moved out, and so the downtown area just crashed, and the hotel was boarded up. It closed in '74, and it was boarded up, and it, but it was saved by Dr. Wallace and his wife, Camilla Wallace. She and her husband bought it, and they boarded it up. And the city wanted to tear it down. It would have been a parking lot. But they saved it. She did enough to keep the wrecking ball away. And her brother, Harmony, he used to stay in the hotel, and he would occasionally put a sheet over his head and put a flashlight under the sheet and walk by the windows of the hotel. And I guess people might have seen it and thought it really was a ghost.
Well, I'm thankful that the Wallace family was able to save this hotel, because it is still a beautiful place. Now, you mentioned you kind of hit on some of the stories about ghost stories, right? So there's been several hauntings here in the Battle House Hotel, right?
Well, yeah, there was a couple that came in 1910, and they had just gotten married, and they stayed in the hotel for maybe a month, and he left and said that he would come back, and she stayed a while, and so she finally hung herself in the Crystal Ballroom. Then there was in 2007, when we opened, there was a wedding before we opened. After we opened, and at that time we had 5 concierges. They had the concierge lounge, which is on the 7th floor, and there was Kay, Juno, and the mother of the bride, and someone else. And they were walking into the Crystal Ballroom, and just before you got into the ballroom, there was this big picture standing on an easel, and they saw a man standing in the picture beside the bride. He had on a gray suit. But when the other guests came, they didn't see the man anymore. So, who knows? But a lot of people think the Battle House during the Civil War was used as a hospital, but it was not. The Grand Hotel was used as a hospital during the Civil War. Then the last one, ghost story that I'll tell you about, is Mr. Butler. Not Rhett Butler, but this Mr. Butler. And it was, he was in the court, one of the Mardi Gras courts, and the lady that he met, she was in the courts too, so they became real close friends and trolloped a little bit there, and her husband found out about it, so he and his brother came over, enticed Mr. Butler to come to the room on the 5th floor, and they beat him up and put him in a bathroom. They went over to Fairhope, that's where they were living, told their father, and their father called the hotel, and so someone went up to the room and sure the man was dead. So the brothers, they fled to Pensacola, but eventually they came back and was arrested, but they didn't get sentenced at all. So if someone stays on the 5th floor and their door shakes at night, that might be Mr. Butler trying to find that room.
So y'all watch out on the 5th floor and watch those pictures that you take in the lobby. You might see someone in the background.
That's right. That was not supposed to be there.
One aspect of the hotel that's not haunted, but it's still kind of interesting, is the Whispering Arch Wall.
Yes, that's 35 feet across, and there's a physics explanation for it, but I read it and I forget about it.
We'll let somebody else do the science on it.
Yeah. But you can actually whisper and hear the other person. And it's amazing to see some of the faces of the people when they do that kind of thing. And it's just the one as you enter the hotel and go into the lobby. It's just that one. It's not the other 3. So
That's that's the Royal Street side of the
Royal
hotel.
Street side of the hotel. That's right.
I've taken some field trip groups that I've had up there, and the kids, my kids love it,
Yeah.
and all the field trip groups I take up there, they're amazed by the Whispering Arch Wall.
Well, they say that the reporters in this press register used to listen to the city fathers talking by getting up into that Whispering Arch, and the boys and girls, when they used to have chaperones, used to whisper to each other when they wanted to meet each other, and the chaperone couldn't hear them. But not just that arch, the whole lobby. You can. They had a fountain many years ago before they came in and renovated this last time. That was a fountain in the middle of the lobby. And I met a young lady after we reopened. She said that she'd come down here in 1945 or 46 with her dad from Montgomery. And she said, I swam in the lobby in the pool. So I think maybe I got her straight. But there was Sam Bauer and Happy Bauer. That father owned the clothing store that was right on the corner of St. Francis and Royal, that was attached to the Battle House. It was the finest women's clothing store in Mobile. And they used to go to Crest and go to the pet department, and they would buy alligators, little baby alligators, and they would put them in the fountain.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, and also, there were ducks that were, the hotel in Memphis have ducks. They still have the ducks, but we had some ducks here also, but they didn't belong to the hotel. They belonged to someone that was staying here that had two sons. So they would bring them up from the bottom, up from the basement, and let them swim around in there. So that fountain is gone now, and we have a tuppet sitting there in its place. But if you take that tuppet away when they get ready to put the Christmas tree up, you can stand right in that middle section and talk, and you can hear your voice swirling around. Or you can get on either side on the edge of the carpet and talk across the tuppet. So, and they've told the young ladies and men that work the front desk, they say, well, now, if a guest checks you in and they make you angry, you wait until they go up on the elevator before you say those choice words about them.
Because they'll hear it, huh?
Yeah, they'll hear it. Oh, man, of course they will.
The Battle House Hotel reopened, like I said, from being boarded up in 2007. What were you doing during that time in between?
74.
But in the 1970s and 80s and 90s.
74 through 2007?
Yes, sir.
I opened the Malaga Inn, which is over on Church Street, Auditorium Drive now they used to call it, Center Drive, in 68. And then I opened the Riverview Plaza Hotel, our sister hotel, in 83. And while being at the Riverview and RS, they bought this hotel and the Riverview, they asked me, did I want to come back? I said, yes. Yeah.
Very good. You hadn't been here since then.
Yeah, been here since 2007.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, and so you've worked in the hotel industry many, many years.
Many years, yeah. Started in 58 and just to add a little more money to what I was making, and came to like it. Started out at banquet, and banquet is good, but then I started doing tableside, and I really fell in love with tableside. It's one-on-one, or two, however many guests you have, and at the Malaga, it's all different now, the service and the type of food. At the Malaga, we did a lot of tableside. We did Caesar salads, and we did entrecôtes, and we did filet. Well, it's not a filet, but it was like a 16-ounce tenderloin, and you would slice it and present it to the guests. You would flame it and put the vegetables on and slice it and present it to the guests. We did a lot of desserts like peach melba, cherries jubilee. Those were flaming. Banana frosted. Those were flaming. Coffee brulee. Those were flaming. And you going back and forth from cup to cup. So it was different then, and it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Another, and that kind of reminds me also of the trellis room here at the Battle House.
Yeah, trellis room here at the Battle House. Of course, a lot now people they are scared of eating raw eggs, so they don't do the Caesar salads anymore. But at the present time, we have Italian style menu. Yes, and it's very good, very good.
And it's a beautiful setting as well.
Oh yes, it's a very beautiful setting.
One of the most historic, I guess.
Yeah,
technically a restaurant in Mobile.
Yeah, it has always been a restaurant or cafeteria, cafe, and they did have it sealed off. They had the ceiling dropped, and they had an extra ceiling above that ceiling, that floor, and it was called the Jackson Room. And when they came in 2003, that's when they started renovating. And the storm in 2005, we took on about 8 feet of water. A lot of stuff happened, so we had to start reworking everything that they had done, and open in 2007. We would have opened in 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Katrina pushed it back a few years.
Pushed it back a few years. So when they came in, they found the stained glass, the Tiffany glass that they didn't realize was over the cafeteria.
Oh wow! So it worked
trellis
out.
Room, and it looks like a trellis also, because they could see the one in the dome, and that's stained glass. That's Tiffany also. It's over 90% of it is the original glass.
Wow.
Yeah. So Tiffany was a son and father and son. One who did jewelry and one did stained glass.
Okay.
And Tiffany, oh man, if you had anything Tiffany in your house back in the early 1900s, you were.
That was a sign of wealth.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about kind of how things have changed. Like I said, you worked in the keep saying restaurant. You've worked in the hotel industry. Generations now. 1950s all the way to today. Yeah. And being an African American, what have you seen changed? How you've been treated, I guess, since then. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, at that time, you could only work in certain areas, but now we have young ladies working the front desks, waiters or waitresses. In 1950, when I started out, they had white waitresses, but they did have banquet waiters were black. But in just certain areas you couldn't work in. You relegated to working housekeeper, working in the laundry. Yeah, so things have changed drastically. Now, I shouldn't say drastically, but changed the things for the good.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. I thought that'd be interesting to see because, like I said, segregated Mobile during that time, and
the I don't know what about other hotels, but the RSA, we bring in people. We call them J1. We bring in people from around the world, and right now we have a young lady from South Africa. She's from Johannesburg. They call it Joburg.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now she's a supervisor. So they come in, they stay a year. We have some people from Peru right now. Okay. So things have changed a lot, and it's all good. It's all good.
You probably never imagined 1958 that in 2023 you'd have a gift shop just outside of the Battle House named after you, right?
I never would have imagined that.
That has to be mind-blowing.
No. I never would have imagined that, and I thank them for doing that. And but when they said, "Do you want to go back home?" Margot Gilbert, she's general manager. She said, "Do you want to go back home?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go back down to the Battle House." Because I was a stupid advisor. I mean, I was a supervisor in the restaurant at the Riverview. And so I was really getting tired of doing that. And so, so we opened in 2007, May 11th. And it was like a couple of hundred short of being 700 people came in and viewed the hotel. But I was kind of saddened. I met a young lady who had been passing by with her grandmother, and her grandmother had worked here, and she died 2 weeks before it opened. Her grandmother really wanted to come in to see it. Yeah, and then I met a man who was a member of Rotary International. He joined in 1914 when it reopened, when it started, and he was telling me he had to have an operation on his foot, and he did make it, but he died like 2 weeks so after, 2 months after we reopened. So those kind of things, well, they're good and they're bad, but you get over it and you go on. But
right.
The hotel has meant a lot to a lot of people in this city.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? What would you like to see happen here in Mobile and maybe this hotel long after you're gone, 50, 60 years from now? What do
that is still standing.
Right.
Yeah, because we are a member of the historic hotels of America and Europe, and 2021 and 2022 we were the best historic hotels of the United States and Europe for 2 years, and the best in Alabama during one of those years. So we have a profile, and that we try to portray that we are the best hotel in the state of Alabama.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with that. Y'all do a great job, and if you live in Mobile, you absolutely need to come stay a weekend, come stay a Friday night, and stay here at the Battle House Hotel, and go eat at some of the restaurants around here.
Right.
And if you're not from here, you need to come make a trip to Mobile, and this is where you need to stay.
Right, and enjoy the spa. We have a very large pool. We have a tennis court, a little driving range, all that in one facility. You don't have to go anywhere else to way out into the country somewhere, but you can enjoy good living, good food at the Battle House Hotel.
That's right, and you can come get a tour with Mr. George when you come.
Yeah, just come see me. I'll make things happen for you.
All right, well, I wanted to transition to our next segment of the podcast, which is called Meat and Three. So we've already gotten into the meat of the show, right? So I got 3 questions that I wanted to ask you before we wrap things up. And so when you go out to eat in Mobile, you're looking for a nice dinner, where's somewhere in town that you like to go?
Ooh, wow. I like to go to a fish restaurant. And I love oysters. I love shrimp. I love seafood, period. Yeah,
I like seafood, yeah.
Most of the seafood restaurants I like to go to.
Second question would be, when you were growing up as a child, what's a memorable meal that you remember growing up as a child that maybe your mom cooked?
Well, avocado salads and plantains for breakfast with powdered sugar. Those were some memorable meals. And chickpeas also. My dad was from Puerto Rico, and chickpeas are very tasty. Some people look at them like, what is that? But I love them. They're really great.
Yeah. All right, my last one is, if you could choose a final meal, what would your final meal be?
Ooh, man.
Seafood, right?
No,
okay.
No. A good prime rib, medium rare, with some au jus, a glass of Burgundy, a glass of Pinot Noir.
I like it.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so this is that'll transition right into our next segment of the show, and it's called Chris's Dishes. And it's where I talk about the best dish that I've had lately. And if you've got a dish that you've had lately that you'd like to share, we can do that too. But the best dish that I had lately was from Dolphins, and it's the LA Paella. Mm-hmm. And it's only served at lunch. They only serve this dish at lunch, so you have to go on the lunch menu. but it's the LA paella is kind of a national dish of Spain, and so it's saffron rice. But at Dolphins, they put it in a bowl with it's got Gulf shrimp and Conecuh sausage. It's got peas and mushrooms and onions, and it's all mixed together. It's fantastic, great dish. So if you get a chance, Dolphins for lunch, and get the LA, which is Lower Alabama paella.
Yes.
Have you had a dish lately in Mobile that you can think of?
No, I sure can't.
Okay.
But I'm sure going to try that paella.
Yep, right across the street.
It'll probably be after Mardi Gras.
Yeah, a lot of things are after Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. George, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've had a great time sitting down with you and hearing your stories and getting to know you better, too.
Everybody will enjoy my little dissertation of Mobile and the Battle House and my early life. Yeah.
I don't have any doubt they're going to enjoy it. So, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you all for listening to the Port City Plate podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes and anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll find the Port City Plate podcast. And so until next time, we will see y'all on the next episode.